I'm
Turned
good.
turned on. Okay, good.
Okay, good.
We're live.
Good evening, everyone. This is Mon Macutay, and you're listening to Hangout Mimic, Season 1, Episode 1. And today we're discussing the many types of games and campaign styles for tabletop role-playing games. So joining me is Toby, BJ, Justin, and
Hello.
Mark. So I'm your host, Mon Macutay, also known as GM Tristan. So let me introduce our guests. Let's start first with Toby. Toby, introduce yourselves to our watchers.
Why are you starting with me?
Because,
Alphabetical.
just because.
So this this is Toby. So what do I say? I love gaming. I'm a game designer in Indigo Entertainment Philippines, and I've been slowly making my way into the game industry with contributions to other books. But I'm not as big as BJ and the rest.
Okay, tell us something about Toby. The games you run and the styles that you favor.
Well, I pretty much run at least one or two games every week. I tend to approach my games with a bit more drama and a bit more mood, partly because of my background in film and in theater.
Mm-hmm.
Lately, I've been focusing on Houses of the Blooded by John Wick. We're about to also start a Bliss Stage game, which is by Ben Lehman, and uh, we also have an ongoing Orpheus campaign, which is under the World of Darkness
Okay.
classic books.
All right. Thanks. Let's go with Justin. Justin, tell us a little something about yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Justin. Call this there. Hi, I'm Justin. Uh, I'm call this. I operate Game in the Brain .blogspot.com. I am a history GM.
Mm-hmm.
I specialize in um, no call this non-fiction, no fiction, non-supernatural, and I specialize in non-supernatural, and I am one of the gearheads of the group. I'm a GURPS player,
Awesome.
GURPS GM. I'm also a MIB, but I am on hiatus because the Philippines has been taken out of the MIB target market. And yeah, currently I'm running a Crusades game, a very heavily researched Crusades game in 1092. It's on hiatus right now, and it's called this. It's going back online on uh, called this April. It has been running for 2 years. This year being the third year when I start the season back again, and it's all been recorded on Hangouts on Air.
Awesome. BJ, can you hear us? Okay, I think BJ is still fixing yung kanyang connection and PC. Anyway, so let's continue the discussion. I'm sure you guys know about the two schools out there in terms of company styles or game styles. No, the first one is called the narrative, and the second style is kind of like the technical and mechanical, where people really go for stats and dice and maps and minis. So let's start the discussion on how you guys run your games, and from those schools, which ones appeal to you most, and your gamers, and why. Let me start it, and so that we can get the discussion flowing. So let me introduce myself first. I'm Mon. I'm a marketing professional. I used to be the marketing director for Level Up for 10 years. I left the company to start my own business a couple of years ago. So now I run my own digital marketing agency, Big Ideas, and abubot.ph, which is a online shop for geeks. Okay, so going to the games I run, it's usually D&D with a mix of some other systems. and I had a 2-year campaign a couple of years back. It's called Winter's Twilight. We started from D&D, switched to Pathfinder, and we ended up with D&D Next. We play tested D&D Next then. No? So in terms of campaign styles, I can say that mine is kind of in the middle. The rules are important, but not for us the ultimate, the end all of everything. We go for more story flavor and narrative and narration, and I also let my players contribute to the flow of the story, character build up, conflicts, etc., etc. So that's where I stand in terms of the gaming style. How about you guys? Toby?
Um, well, I used to be very much a stickler of rules myself, but given my interests were more of White Wolf than D20, I'll have to admit my definition of being a stickler of rules isn't as technical and as specific as it is for D20 games.
Right.
Lately, however, I've been shifting to be a GM that prefers more games where players have a lot more freedom to explore narrative control as well.
Mm-hmm.
I like trying to approach games with with a bit more theatrics and a bit more drama, simply because I sort of like making sure that my gamers experience a game which they can't exactly have through video games.
Okay.
So I'm leaning more towards the narrative than I am toward the technical and strategic.
Okay. Ako rin, no? I started out with really being a rules lawyer kind of thing. In fact, during second ed AD&D, kind of like memorize where all the pages of all the major rules are, even the spells and the pages. So I've probably read the basic books or book around 7 times. But eventually, it's a stage. Parang for me, you go past that, and when life catches up with you, because at that stage, hindi pa busy. Di ba? I was in college or, well, no family yet. But eventually, when life catches up with you, trying to catch up with all these rules, parang nagiging mahirap eh. What's your take on that, guys?
I'm very similar. Call this I'm like everybody, I guess, who started out very rules oriented.
Tama,
I,
tama.
I don't want to say that I'm preaching to the choir. I don't want to think like that. But the thing about it is, um, call this. I used to do the prep for mass combat, social engineering. GURPS kasi has a lot of tool sets for these. I used to run and prepare Traveler. I would do all the homework and preparation, but as my responsibilities at work more call this increased, it was very impractical.
Yeah,
Uh,
I understand.
it yeah it was before I had like more time because I was like doing part-time work as in drawing and all these other stuff, so I could mix in my gaming. But now I really do, I'm a full-time um, uh, call this troubleshooter in our company, and I really don't have the time to prepare all these things. So I had to boil it down to what mattered.
How about you, Toby? When did this shift happen, and how did your gaming group or your groups take it? Did you tell them that, oh, biglaan, we're not a stickler for rules na from now on, or is it a stage or something like a subtle thing until everyone nasanay na?
Well, back when we were playing White Wolf, I already was bending a lot of the rules in terms of making sure the players always felt special. Um, and back then, I simply saw it as me using what White Wolf referred to as the golden rule,
Right. Yeah.
wherein, feel free to break the rules as long as the players have fun. I couldn't really do that so much in D20
Mm-hmm.
without actually trying to create my own homebrewed versions of the systems I wanted to portray. I recall even at one point I tried to stat up the different character classes of Final Fantasy Tactics just to be able to play a game that felt like Final Fantasy Tactics.
Okay.
Um, the
Ouch.
shift really began formally. The shift really began formally when I encountered Houses of Blooded. Um, because
And
in
what
during
year
the
was
White
that?
Wolf era, it was really what year was it? Barely around 7 years ago at most.
Fairly recent. Okay.
Um, yeah, it was fairly recent as far as I'm concerned. Although it was more of a realization that a lot of the things I felt were me just changing things, I discovered were actually for some other games actually part of the rules, and that's when I felt more confident about doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It was less about me, quote unquote, cheating so that the players have fun, and more realizing there are games out there that actually make this part of the rule
Right.
rather than this being something you have to do just to make the game more interesting.
Okay. Sa akin naman, my experience was out of 100% of the groups, I have around three. Around 75 to 80% of them got used to being a stickler for rules. That we have to check everything, we have to calculate XP, we have to generate on the loot table, we have to roll for wandering monsters every time. So when I started the shift, actually I didn't start the shift on the same system because for me baka magulat sila eh. So I started
Mhm.
doing games like the Windows and other indie games and narrative games, no? Parang I wanted to get a feel of them on how they would react. Some of them took it okay naman, but some really parang hindi pa sanay on because they were really rules guys. So this is a cue for us to open up the discussion like how do you deal with the players during that stage wherein you're shifting to a more lax version of DMing from the traditional mechanical stage, no? How do you deal with the players na parang deep inside, hindi nila sinasabi as DM na I don't like these types of games. I don't have control because parang wala akong stats, wala akong, I don't feel the power. How do you guys deal with that? Justin?
Well, in my case,
Toby, go.
first go. Okay. Well, in my case, kasi um, I've sort of I've always been a bit more upfront about it ever since I've started exploring other games and indie games. When I find players who are curious or interested in trying those type of games, I make sure they have an idea what they're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
So like for example, when I run Dungeon World for some people, upfront I already tell them that it's not going to be as crunchy.
It's a minimalist
Many things many things you're comfortable with don't exist in the game, such as initiative.
or
Um,
lists.
and yeah, so I try to make sure they're always aware of what they're getting into,
Mm-hmm.
simply because expectations help in managing whether or not someone will enjoy a new experience. If they jump in thinking it's going to be D&D, and then you actually throw them um, a game like the Burning Wheel, they'll freak out because it's totally a different change, and ultimately they'll feel like they didn't get what they want.
Okay, but
So,
how did the rules lawyer types of players in your games take it after you explained it? Did they give you feedback? Did they enjoy it?
well, um, I guess I have the advantage of frequency, being able to run games often.
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of, when I've seen players who try a game and let's say they didn't like the system, I simply, focus on the systems they prefer when I play with them. And I don't make an effort to quote unquote change their minds. I've long I've started to accept that some people just long for a different experience and it's their right to enjoy the game the way they want it.
Or not.
Those who do like the shift though, those who like the suddenly they feel happy with the chantive or the excitement to of having a game that doesn't deal with so many charts,
Yep.
then I encourage them further by sharing other games, letting them know that there are other experiences to try. I don't force someone who isn't interested to try it. I simply wait for them to decide if they really want to.
Yeah. Yeah. How about what you
The
just
other
did?
guy, the other guys are Mark,
Yeah,
PJ, any of you? Oh yeah, Mark.
you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, Mark. Why don't
Hey,
you introduce yourselves to our listeners?
yeah, so I'm Mark. Well, I've been GMing for like zero over 20 years now. Ever since I was in grade 6, actually. Most of the systems that I've run are crunchy. That's because I was exposed very, very early on. Actually, way back in 1991, I was already exposed to GURPS. I bought it when I was in the States. So most of the systems I run are very, very crunchy. So with regards to your earlier question about
Right.
um, uh, how you transition from like D&D to more narrativist games, I think um, yeah, it's also a question of what the player is looking for. But in my particular case, I didn't really go too far down the narrativist or the story game path. I haven't really strayed that to that part. So I'm more like
In the middle.
yeah. Right now, my system of choice is Fate, which
Yeah.
is somewhere in the middle.
It's an awesome game.
So yeah, it still has crunch structures, and you can tune it to be crunchy or not be crunchy, and
Yes.
it still has that narrative core at its very center, which I think is the right balance for my particular style of GMing. So in my case, I was just to sell my players on Fate. I would present to them the story, and I would say that the rules that I'm going to use are like a physics engine for the story, and not really a physics engine for the world.
Yeah. My experience with Fate similar, Mark. No, thanks. Uh, I think that Fate is a house rule fanatic's dream because most games naman, well, the best campaigns and the best games that I actually experience from other DMs really have your own house rules, di ba? So
Hmm.
the Fate system, it's just a toolkit with the basics, and you can put house rules that you think you like from other games. For example, you can run Fate with some house rules from 13th Age because the aspects are similar to the one unique thing. You can have the icons in there. You can have escalation dice, whatever you want, or their combat theater of the mind. Di ba? You know
Hmm.
that kind of thing. You can put that into it. So, which brings us to the topic of you know gaming and DMing style is more of like house rules. What's your what can you guys tell me about that? Do you have house rules you get from other systems? Any experiences? Any nice stories or anecdotes? Toby?
Starting with me. Wait, sorry, I'm cooking. Well,
Hey, how about me? I can
um,
try.
Okay, cook muna Toby. Let's go with Justin.
go
Okay.
go go.
Justin,
Okay.
go.
Yeah, that's a nice thing about this. You can do chores.
Cooking
Oh,
Master Boy. Kung Master Boy siya level 1. Pag nag-fail siya doon, sunog yung linod niya.
Um, I actually right now I'm still using GURPS when I'm doing a narrative type play. I've really just chosen to really take the system by its promise that any rule can be thrown out, and
Mm-hmm.
I've done that. I've thrown out the combat rules basically. And have you guys played GURPS? Are
Yes,
familiar with
yes,
it?
yes.
I
There
have.
is
I never
yes.
had.
Very familiar with it.
Okay, you would
Are familiar with
Toby,
it?
you will find it very frustrating because
Which one?
it's a second by second combat system, and
Yeah.
when a player is not ready or he's forced to just wait, you have to pass his turn, and for me that was just heartbreak.
And the
Okay.
infamous 3 second fireball. So you wait for 3 turns to cast your fireball.
Yeah, that is heartbreaking when on average the player cannot
Bayaran eh,
think
4
as
umaga. Actually, papagawa ako na
yeah.
nag-deposit. Kasi papagawa ko.
Okay.
Ano daw?
Anyway, that player that cannot think on his
Pero
feet as
ibigay ko sa'yo
quickly
bukas sa bangko
is
mo,
the one.
lalagay
Yeah.
down cash. Pera na lang.
Uh, Mon, I can hear you.
Ibigay ko sa'yo eh.
Sorry.
Daanan mo mo.
There we go.
Sorry. I I can hear your conversation, your side conversation. So yeah. What happened was, yeah, every time the guy doesn't know what to do, he's struggling, he's trying to figure out what he's gonna do, and sometimes the only thing he can tactically do is just pass. It's really really frustrating for me as a GM, and I can hear the disappointment of the player as I have to pass him to another player who is more able to take charge. So in the end, I had to throw out that combat system and just focus on the significant actions. I give them enough time for them to make it matter, make their moment matter. So that was an example of like shifting around the rules and really taking GURPS by its promise that I can throw out any rule. And I threw out their second by second rule.
How about you, Mark?
Well, some would say that that feature of GURPS where you can throw out any rule is indication of bad design. Now, that's some people's opinion, ha, not necessarily mine. Kasi yun yung philosophy ng mga generic systems sa 90s eh. Because you were supposed to be able to throw out what didn't work. That was how GURPS worked. That was how Big Eye Small Mouth worked. And yeah. Well, let's see. Question was house rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, generally, I tend to run the rules as much as possible. I tend to run the rules as written because I want to try to have express the designer's intent in the game as much as possible. I tend to make house rules only if I disagree with the designer's implementation of certain things. Like what was I think for um, like I think the latest one was D&D fourth edition, where there were so many little itty bitty rules that I didn't agree with. So, well, in those cases, when it was ambiguous, I ended up making a ruling. But generally, I tend to run games with the rules as written. So house rules ko are like siguro it's only like for a certain flavor or for a certain effect or for a custom implementation of the rules. Like for example, I would if for example, let's say I wanted psionics in the Forgotten Realms or gunpowder in the Forgotten Realms, I'd make a house rule for that. My house rules tend to be like that.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah. Uh, Yeah. Wait. Toby, can you call this? Can you give another example of a house rule that kind of changed your play style? Particular,
Oh,
maybe. Yeah.
well, one of the first house rules that I ever actually did in my games was to throw away experience points. I just got frustrated at the idea that um, you had to grind to get experience points.
And it's too much
Um,
thing.
I mean, it was fun back when I was still in high school because gaming was pretty what's the word, frequent, given we were all students and nobody really cared about having to work for a living.
It was like,
Um,
wow. Diba?
and games, and not to mention games back then were very what's the word? Every session was practically set seconds after the last game session.
Right.
So it sort of made sense that your development had to be slow because the story was like, 2 months into the game. It's only been a week as far as game time is concerned.
Yeah.
But when we started getting deeper into World of Darkness, um, most especially, and we started to play games that spanned decades, I found a lot of the ways they tried to approach experience points frustrating. So, like, White Wolf had maturation points, it had freebie points, it had experience points. You had the fluctuation of background dots. You have backgrounds that get absorbed because they become useless, and then you have to replace them, this and that. And it came to a point that I just threw it all away, and I decided every game session I'll let the player have something cool. And that was one of the bigger changes I've had when it comes to house ruling things. The
Okay.
other one would be the fact that I never let players die unless it was utterly
Stupid.
appropriate due to stupidity. Um, so I've had many, many games where a bad roll would lead to a character being brought down, but they still recover. They still show up in the next scene, or they still heal after a length of time.
Parang
They'd
comic.
probably be punished. Yeah,
Parang comics. Parang Marvel or DC. No
yeah.
one really dies.
Or like parang TV show, when a character is gone for a brief moment and then they come back, you're alive. Yeah, I
Back!
survived. Or
Because of this, blah,
yeah.
blah, blah.
And yeah, because plain and simple, I didn't see the need for the main people of the to die just because of a stupid role. Um, Later on, of course, I started to realize that it's best to tone it with game expectations. Like, maybe some games, death does happen, and that's the price to pay. And maybe in other games, the players are the main cast, so they might never die, but that means everyone else they love, you can kill them to make sure they get the point.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, I guess that's where my house ruling really began.
Okay. Let me share with you guys sa akin naman. The major house rule that I had, especially for D&D and Rifts and all the other games, was what we call in our group the hero point or the notch system. Basically, it's a learning tool. I encourage the players to be better role players, solve a puzzle, or be creative in playing. No, whenever that happens, I give them a notch or what we call it a hero point. And the hero point, they can return it. So it's a card or a chip, and they can return it back to me to get like a reroll, an automatic success, escape, or a clue or a hint. In fact, I was so glad when I was viewing the Pathfinder system and looking at their SRD. They had a similar thing called the hero point, which is what we have been doing for the past 20 years. Uh, so it's a friendly competition among yung mga players. No, oh, oy, wow, I must earn like a hero point tonight during our games, or I must role play better. I must solve this conflict or this problem or the crisis. So in terms of character death naman, well, si Toby is more on the lax side. Ako, I'm not in the real, di naman ako dun sa evil GM side, na probably in the middle. I treat character death as a learning tool. Uh, if they're really meant to die, and then sometimes when the dice really, it comes out and you really are killed, and you can't do anything about it, you don't save. I let it I let it go. I mean, I let it happen. I let the dice fall where they are. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Simply because ang philosophy ko as a DM or a GM is when they play in other games, I want them to become more careful and become better players, become more analytical, uh, solve problems, and sometimes as a player, you have to, even though hindi ka rules lawyer, you have to make situations where your feats, your powers, or abilities can be to your advantage. It really is a game after all, and sometimes that's how some people define winning for them, because in RPGs no one wins naman eh. So that's how I do most of the house rules. I also, like I said before, kumukuha rin ako inspiration from a lot of other systems. During the 90s, wala namang internet, and all I had was Dragon magazines and other publications, and I use those ideas to make my own house rules and put them into the game. So my game is like 50% system and 50% mine, but we really have fun and we really like the
Mm-hmm.
campaigns. Okay, Justin, you're up.
Yeah. Yeah. I have some. I share Toby's frustrations as well. Like in character development, I do not actually care about XP. One of the problems I found in particularly GURPS and many other systems is there's this thing called you double pay for something. You have to earn it in game and you have to pay for it for in XP or in character development. Meaning your character could have trained 2,000 hours and the GM won't
Uh-huh.
let you advance unless you kill something, which is
Okay.
very parang you could say it's double paying for something, which is not doesn't make sense and actually kind of like for me it disrupts my sense of reality for the game. The other problem I have is that
Mm-hmm.
um, before it was about the game, now I just care about the players. One of the things I realized is that death just takes a player out of the game, and he can't. He invested in the time to hang out with me and the other guys, and now he did something wrong. He made a mistake, or the dice really was just unlucky, and he's out of the game. And for me, death is not actually the worst thing to happen in a game.
Yeah.
Disempowerment, psychological disempowerment, is actually worse than death. So in my what I've done is created non-binary consequences wherein success is not simply success. Success may come with problems, and failure might be the best thing to happen to you. In fact, so and this is kind of like how people actually go through life with their coping mechanism. So I implemented that kind of system. So when shit happens, talagang it could be for the better or for the worse of the character. But unless the player can shift to another character, I try not to take the player out of the game. Um, if it means keeping that
Okay.
character alive but disempowered, I will do
Mark, how
that.
about you?
Pero yeah,
Sorry, what was the question again?
Okay. So the question was, we're on house rules now when we're discussing character death. Like there are ways where the DM, like Toby's style, is make sure that unless it's really stupid, that really kill off characters. And on the extreme naman, there are people there are GMs who are really talaga
Mm,
strict.
yeah.
the if the villain rolls a 20, critical hit, you die. Even
Yeah.
parang ganun. So where are you on that?
Well, I try not to kill characters because that represents player investment
Mm-hmm.
in the story. So, however, that said, I do try my best to make them uh, suffer. So, my gold standard for a good game is a game where um, things are really, really bleak. Things you actually have a actually will are gonna pull through just by the skin of your teeth, but you'll pull through.
Like the movie Armageddon, something like
Yeah,
that.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Okay.
So for me, that's what I strive for in my game. So you think you're going to die, but at the end you're able to think of, or you're able to get the clues that are able to snatch victory from death at the last moment. That's the sort of rush that I'm trying to go for in my games. So if I kill them off, usually it's going to be because, um, well, usually it's because it would make sense for them, as in I would have given them lots of opportunities to redeem themselves. But in the end, I mean, there won't be that thrill of overcoming
Got it.
something that's dangerous without it actually being dangerous. So occasionally, I will have to end up killing a character or so, or two.
Okay. So have you guys experienced as players, no? Or when you play under a DM or a GM who did a TPK, a total party kill? I mean, did that ever come up?
No, not for me.
About 2 years ago.
Okay. Uh, sa akin, yeah,
Well,
that go Toby.
my first game was a TPK for me. Well, then again, it was a solo game, and the GM killed me within 10 minutes.
Okay.
That,
So
that was a, younger student wanting to play with upperclassmen, so I kept nagging them to let me play. They allowed me to play this ranger who turns out to be on a volcano that's erupting, so I'm pretty much dead within the first 10 minutes.
I have a traveler game where we all died. Call this. Um, and that GM is Mark Knights. Uh, yeah, Mark Knights. He has a blog. He's also a very active GM. He's also teaching me Python.
okay.
Uh, he he killed off our party in 2013. Traveler. It was a very hard opponent, and um, everybody just made mistakes because the playstyle was not as serious. Uh, I think it's from what I read of Mark, it was just he was also fatigued and he needed to close the game, and it was a way for him to. It was a way to get it out in a bang. Uh, in that game, my character was slowly kind of like falling to pieces. I got burned alive. I got I lost limbs. My character has terrible stats, yet managed to survive. So uh, it wasn't. It was a great way to end. It felt. I don't know about the other guys, but it felt like I played a horror game
Oh,
because I got um, everything, and I really pushed his stats. As in, like he has only merchant, and I used everything I knew, every Munchkin trick I knew to survive. Uh, you know, in the end, it was very hard because it I had a lot of dead time. So I'm like trying to prevent that from my players that they don't, you know, they don't have nothing to do.
all right. Uh, let's go on with the next question. We have around 15-20 minutes left for the show. So maybe some tips or suggestions for fellow DMs on how they can improve their games. Whether they're playing narrative, whether they're playing technical kinds of games. What would you advise, especially the new generation of gamers out there? Because it's good for me, no, especially for us who've been in the hobby for a lot of years. Huwag na natin i-ano yung years, how many. What can you advise the young ones? Let's say the Padawan DMs out there. Anyone would like to start?
Um, Anybody?
Go,
I
it's
can
you.
go. Okay. First of all, it's really good to expose yourself to other GMs and how they run games.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see all these other GMs how they run games, you pick and choose their tricks. I mean, if you're obsessive about it, you do notice it. If you observe, you notice it, and you pick and choose, and you use your empathy to find out how would, if I was the GM, would you want the GM to work so hard to prepare for a game? And I didn't want my GM to work so hard that he would sacrifice too much of his social life for it.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, empathy, expose yourself to other GMs. I mean, I know that can be taken as a joke, but you know what I mean. Exposure, not expose the other meaning.
Got it. Mark? Toby? Are you done cooking?
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
go.
my advice.
I'm actually frying, so I'm on mute for now because it's really loud. But I
Go
think
ahead.
Mark will go first.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I guess for excuse me, for the new people, for newbies trying to GM for the first time, I think the advice I give is don't be afraid to play with fiction or insert story elements in your game, even if you're playing something very procedural like D&D or even like D&D. You can always, I mean, D&D has stuff built in, especially the fifth edition has stuff built in to allow you to tell a story. So don't be afraid to tell a story, and don't be afraid to see where the story goes. Because in the end, and even if you don't really follow the rules exactly, in the end, you'll know that you have a good game if they start to talk about what happened to the characters in the game. So don't be afraid to try and experiment with ways to tell different stories with the rule system that you have, regardless of what it is.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Since Toby is frying, ako naman,
I'm
some,
here. I'm back.
okay. So yeah, for Toby, we're on the topic of tips for new
Yeah.
DM. Go ahead.
So for new, yeah, well, whether GM or player, I'll probably mention. First of all, is ignore routine. A lot of players and a lot of GMs make the mistake of opening or focusing on a scene by doing something the character routinely does.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the character is playing a soldier, what are you doing? I'm doing my rounds. Do something else. Make it more interesting. The spotlight's on you. Take
Right.
advantage of the fact that you're the focus. Don't sit by saying you're doing your day job. Maybe that scene is the day you've decided to propose to your girlfriend. Maybe that scene is the day you've realized you're tired of your job. But make it count. The second suggest is don't be afraid of failures.
Okay.
Whether it's a failed roll, whether it's a botch, whether it's a failed attempt, realize that a lot of the greatest moments in cinema and in stories happen because something goes wrong.
Right.
So whenever something goes wrong in your game, you see it as a chance to see where the story will go. You
Right.
know, you failed to seduce the girl, then pay the price. Let her smack you and, play the scene out.
Or
You
she might
failed to
not.
kill the villain as he escaped.
She might
Yeah,
not really
don't
be a
see it as
girl.
a as, don't
Double baka
So,
double tap.
embrace failure. Embrace failure and learn to fall forward. Learn to make sure that every time you fail, you're still making the story move forward, whether you're the GM or the player. And the last thing I would say is just role play. If you're afraid that you're doing it too much, people will tell you. But until you're told that you're doing it too much, just role play. Just enjoy the role, play the character, and you'd be surprised a lot of people were waiting for you to do that.
Okay. Okay, awesome. That's great. Something similar to what you said. Uh, my advice for DMs and for players then, don't be afraid to bend the rules or do something that is not within the context of the rule book or even the campaign or the theme or even the game. Because for me, the greatest stories that will be told when you guys grow up and you reminisce about your games, about those are gonna be about those amazing things that you tried to do, di ba? And the DM sometimes will allow you, and it makes for good stories. My second tip is to just game and earn experience because nothing beats experience. You will get things wrong. I mean, that's okay. That happened to all of us. That happened to me. Uh, you will you will fumble up on something, but in the end, no one doesn't care. What you guys will be after is a good story, and if you guys around the table have fun. Another tip, lastly, is there are lots of resources out there. The internet is a good place to start. Google is your friend. We have forums, we have Facebook groups, D&D Philippines and Philippine Tabletop RPGs, where you can post questions, ask the elders, the Cthulhu guys, so to speak. If you have any questions on games, how to deal with players, everyone's there to help, and everyone's there to share experiences. So yeah, that's it for me. Anything else, guys, you want to uh, take care of on new topics? Probably pose a question for everyone. You guys can go ahead. Hello.
Yeah, should we direct them to a certain link? If
Uh,
and if ever they have suggestions.
yeah, just search D&D Philippines on Facebook. You guys can and Philippine Tabletop RPGs. You guys will be brought to our group, and then you guys can join. That's basically where we hang out.
Yeah, it's an open
I
group.
will post.
Kidoki.
I'll post all the blogs and
Links on our
groups.
YouTube YouTube live stream.
Yep,
Yep.
yep. I'll post that.
Okay, we have around 10, 12 minutes left. Uh, so it's open discussion. If you want us to tackle anything along the lines of GMing and campaign styles, we're not saying that technical or mechanical play is wrong. I mean, if you guys enjoy it, go ahead. I mean, Fourth Ed was to be played like that, like I call Fourth Ed as a parang MMORPG wannabe. So,
Yeah,
uh,
pen and paper MMO.
oo eh. But some people enjoy that. I mean, meron
Yeah,
ngang
my
break,
brother is a big fan of it.
and we're not saying that if you're doing that, it's wrong. We're not. We're not. We're just saying that there are other things out there. Uh, and D&D is not just when you say RPG, it's not just D&D. You should experiment with games. In fact, there are a lot of free games out there that you can just download and play. There are even Fate Course, pay what you want. You can pay zero, you can pay
Mm.
$10, whatever, and you can basically get it for free, and you can experiment with that. You can join our open games. Basta as long
Yeah.
as you guys are gaming and enjoying, yun. That's the way to spread the hobby and invite a lot of other players to try it out.
You one place you can always draw a lot of ideas from is how you actually interact with other people.
Hmm.
I mean, just auditing how well you listen to people in general, how well you pay attention to what they say, if you catch, if you're able to say, if you're able to know what they want to say, or do you know what point they're trying to bring into the discussion very accurately and quickly, then you have the skill set that makes you either a good player or GM. Those are the communication skills are foundation of a good game.
Okay, let's probably one more topic before we wrap up. So you Justin brought up a thing about skills, about being a GM. Okay, let's list down three skills that for you guys are essential to being a good game master or dungeon master.
Um, who goes first? BJ,
Uh,
can you participate? Okay,
Hello.
okay, it's not lighting up. Okay, Mon, you go first.
Okay, me. Uh, Number three. Top three, no? Three, two, one. Three is a being a sense of fairness. Being firm but fair. Uh, of course, a game has to have rules. Kahit narrative, kahit ano, I mean, like what I said sa seminar ko, no? Level 1 people, 99.9% can't go into a dungeon and kill a red dragon. I mean, that that doesn't happen unless they have like a dragon lance or something and they have a lucky roll. Diba? That's 99% of the time they won't. So within those frameworks, uh, even though it's a fantasy game, there are things that are kind of impossible. So you have to balance it out. And that's what I meant by being firm, being fair at the same time. Uh, the second tip that I'd like to that I think is very important for a DM is knowledge. By that I mean that if you're the DM, the word master is there for a reason. As a player, I'm not expecting you to memorize all the rules or the tell me which page there is or how to calculate or memorize all the tables. No, but at least you have to have a lot of knowledge for you to run the game. A game is not fun when okay, I do this. Wait, let me read. I can't do that. Or okay, next round I try to do this. Wait, let me read again. Oh, you can do that, but, di ba? Parang nagiging pirated DVD. Nag-skip siya and lag. So you have to have a working knowledge of the game in order for you to run it. It's called running is entirely managing it. And number one, for me, is to really, really, you can bend the rules. So it's an irony to number two and three, but you can really bend the rules if the story will be for the better. Diba? So there are certain examples like even if you can't do that, pero magiging epic naman yung ano. And then there are minor things that you can bend to make the story better. Because at the end of the day, it really is the stories that you guys will remember, and not because that you have a Vorpal blade or not the 6,000 platinum pieces that you got and turned it into XP. No, no. It really is yung conflicts and the stories that how you run the games and how your players loved what happened. Nag-develop by character nila. They found out pala that wow, he's my father, something like that. If you go along the lines of epic movies like Star Wars, The Matrix, Lord of the Rings, all of this, it really is really telling stories. RPG is just a modern way to tell stories around the campfire with dice and a rule set. That's it for me. Who wants to go
Toby?
next?
It's hard, tough act to follow. I'd say one.
Three
A
skills.
skill a GM, yeah, a skill a GM should have is he should be a sponge.
Okay.
He should absorb what the players are talking about. He should be absorbing how people talk or how shows tell their stories. You should take it all in and use it, because when you're a GM, you won't be able to tell stories if you're empty.
Right. Right.
Second would be improvisation. It's one thing to have ideas. It's one thing to have a lot of knowledge, but it won't be fun unless you find a way to make that work with what the players are throwing at you.
You can't plan for
I mean,
everything.
you could
Yeah.
like, diba? You could read
Yeah.
all the rule books and memorize all the monster manuals and be a huge fan of Tolkien. But if the players are doing a scene and all you do is tell them how it should happen rather than make the story work with what they're giving you, it's not gonna work. You
Right.
have to be able to improvise with what is thrown at you that very moment. Um, which leads to number three, which is knowing your limits.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing your limits, whether it means, I need a timeout, I need 5 minutes to decide on how the scene will unfold, to knowing your limits in the sense of, okay, maybe I'm pushing the story too far, or maybe I'm making it too aggressive, or maybe I'm being too cruel to my players.
Right. Right.
So I guess that would be the three I'd bring up, yeah, because Mon really gave good ones.
Before I go to Justin, may anecdote lang ako dun sa sinabi ni Toby that
Okay.
you can't really you have to improv. You can't really plan for everything. I'll tell you a short story. When I was playing back in the 90s, we had the DM and we were mid-level, around 4 to 7, average 5. And we went into this dungeon where we were up against a vampire and his minions. And the vampire was a monk, so he had 5 attacks and level 2 draining levels per attack. So tinamaan ako ng dalawa. Suddenly level 5, level 1 na ako. Parang Dianet. Okay. So, and he set up all these elaborate traps and monsters and a huge dungeon crawl. And when he asked us, oh, guys, what are you going to do? Sabi ng DM namin. And me, as the party leader, I said, we're teleporting back to town and we're going back in the morning. And he was like, what? Yes, we're going in the morning. I mean, they're vampires. I mean, may vampire minions, probably asleep. And he was like, nakanganga siya ng ganun na gaping. What? I didn't plan for that. Well, sorry you. We go to town, heal up. And then we went back in the morning and and one of my other players pulled out the monster manual and said, "Look, they're asleep in the morning, and we will just open the coffins and stake them in the heart and get all the treasure." And there, I mean, parang the anecdote, the moral of the story is, even if you really plan for everything, sometimes more often than not, players will do something different. Kaya over preparation for me isn't really practical. You can write lots and lots of notes. Ganun ganon. You can develop an entire story. Like one DM that I played under developed this starship. We're playing a sci-fi game, and then he said, "What guys, are you going to the starship?" No, it's not. It's not relevant. We leave. Para sayang lang, di ba? So the moral of the story is don't plan for everything and learn how to improv. When things like that suddenly, yeah, that's why I like DMing. It's a challenge. Eh. The players, parang akala nila the players lang are challenged by what you put out there or what the situations you give them, but it's not. It's the other way around when they devise these cool things that will, parang shock you. Huh? So good GM will learn how to, parang ano yun eh, parang chess eh, chinek ka eh, di ba? How do you avoid the mate? And you have to have something in return then that not naman unfair, but will provide for a good story thing and put the adventure or your campaign to a new height or new level. Okay, so Justin, three tip, I
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
three skills for GMs.
Okay, this is all I've been actually blogging about lately. Uh, Basically, for me, the way I do it, this is how I best see it. Three things are not so high in the priority, but very
Go ahead.
important, is pacing. Pacing is a
Mm-hmm.
skill and a way to organize your thoughts as a GM from setup to managing tension. It's
Nice.
so powerful as an organization tool and as a way to manage the emotions and investment of the player. Um, if you master pacing, you can master preparation and a scene.
That didn't sound right. If
Emotional.
you master basic, baka dahan-dahan.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So if you master pacing, master pacing
All right.
allows you to. Yeah. Next for me is storytelling. So if you're a natural storyteller, if you're natural, uh, makwento ka, this is already with other, if your other skills are not so good, even if your pacing sucks, your storytelling is good, you will have your players. It doesn't even have to mean that you're great at making up stories. You can write a story. You can play along. That's an important skill. Because
Awesome.
as a GM, yeah, diba, you yes and you yes but you play along more than you introduce story. I mean, this is my personal philosophy regarding it. And then the most important of all skills is active listening.
Mm-hmm.
If you cannot active listening, if you cannot perform active listening, if you have trouble with active listening, as in, yeah, giving immediate feedback, active listening can be also called cold reading. A lot of it is immediate feedback and reading and trying to um, get the exact idea of the player. Once you master active listening, parang everything can be done. Parang that's a skill that for me, as in my personal philosophy, I think that's the most important skill. If you're a good listener, you
Yes.
can GM.
And sometimes
Um,
kasi, like on experience, my experience is you can just outline the scenario or the scene or the conflict. For example, no, you guys go back uh, to your base. And when you open the door, you see blah blah blah. This guy so and so did. And ikaw, as a DM, wala ka naman linagay na notes on who killed him, how he died, and why, di ba? And I agree with Justin when he said active listening. The players will have all their uh, conspiracy theories about that, and you can take ideas from that. Parang, ooh, that's a good idea. I could run with that. Maybe it wasn't really the butler or something like that, di ba, Justin?
hmm,
Was
yeah,
that what you meant by active listening?
yeah, but it goes farther than that. Active listening is like cold reading. It's like you're
Oh,
reading the player's mind before he even says it. When you know that, I think the player, parang you come to the conclusion that okay, the player wants this out of the scene. He wants this
ooh, uh-oh. That's the call. Okay, Mark, it's you. Three tips that you would like, three skills that you think
Yeah.
are essential for GMs.
Okay, okay. Sorry, I got PC.
Okay, there you go. Well, sige, let Justin finish first.
Okay, Justin,
Oh,
go.
yeah. Sorry, I was just to wrap it up. Once you like cold reading, the skill that's used for faking fortune telling. Once you can guess what the player's most buttons are, you have a lot of tools to make up the scene, and they will go with it. Parang
Awesome.
like what fortune tellers do.
Parang may third eye. Parang ganun.
No, the fortune tellers cold read.
Okay.
They
Yeah, yeah,
use leading statements and various other tricks to make you reveal something that you would not say. And an active listener is just like
yeah. Cool.
level one. Cold reading is like level higher level.
Got
But
it. Got
I gotta look that up.
yeah,
I've only heard
yeah.
about that today.
Okay.
uh, yeah. So yeah, it's also kind of dangerous because once you notice certain things, you try not to notice them because it makes life easier to live. But it's a very useful skill.
But I think all of us do that. We're not
Mm,
just, di ba? Because we know that for example, this player, correct me if I'm wrong, huh? We know that this player is a sneaky type of guy. He would like call up reinforcements, go to the king and demand like spy on the villain. Is that what you're saying, Justin?
Yeah, yeah. But
Mm,
you know
okay,
that he will do that, so you conspire to make it that when he does it, it's like the timing is just right.
interesting. Oh,
The things he thought of was just right by doing yes and yes but, and
okay,
you use yes and yes but just the right amount that you get it. You peak his emotion, and then that's
got
when
it.
you do the release. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I
for
think I got
basic.
it. All right, that's great. That's like what Mark said. We gotta look that up, and that's very interesting. Mark, you're on.
Yeah, I'm just gonna add one thing because all of you have given such great tips. Um, I guess what I'm gonna add is you have to remember that if you're going to be a GM, you're actually there to uh, you're providing a game. So your players are at the table because they want to be entertained. I've seen a lot of newbie GMs, also all of the horror stories from newbie GMs, who GM primarily for themselves. I was like that actually when I was younger, and it tends to unless you're like it tends to drive people away. Um,
Okay,
but if you
Amen,
really
amen.
yeah if you could empathize with the reasons why your players are there, then you could um, yeah you'll basically be more entertaining.
okay.
Basically, it's
Uh,
like it's using the tools like what Justin mentioned earlier. Those
yeah.
tools about being empathic with the players and stuff.
Okay, I
That's it.
think. Uh, let me get it right, Mark. What are you trying to say that you design a game, an adventure, should be for the player's enjoyment and less than the spotlight is on you? Parang ganon?
Not exactly. It's more like of course you have to GM because you like to
Right,
do it, but you mustn't just do it for yourself. You also have to take into account the enjoyment of the players,
right.
because otherwise it's like um it's you're what's the right word, you're being selfish.
right. Okay,
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the other. I mean, you guys have already given such great tips. I think just had to add that one.
okay. So I guess we just have time for our final statements, and basically you can summarize the discussion, give your final tips, and tell everyone what you thought. Let me start, and then I'll call out so we can take turns. So, well, for me, this was a great podcast slash hangout feed, and I learned a lot of things, no? Like how other DMs handle it, some tricks, how to shift from a rules heavy or a crunchy game to a less so to like a balance between narrative and that, and also the tips. And I really enjoyed hosting it and learning it from you guys. So for everyone who's been following us or is listening to this YouTube uh, live feed, this will be recorded and it will be put up in the link. And you guys are open to join our Facebook group. Just search Philippine Tabletop RPGs or D&D Philippines. And let me plug that we're going to have DM seminars this April. We're just finalizing the date, and we'll have more tips for you. We'll also have open games.
We do have a date. It's
Oh,
the
what date?
last
Okay.
weekend of April, last Sunday of April.
All right. Awesome.
That's confirmed already.
Okay, great. And you guys can find the details at our Facebook page, right, Mark? It's gonna be there.
Yeah, I'll be posting the details.
All right. All right. So
I'll
that's it
be
for
posting
that's
the
it for
details
me.
like
I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time out from your busy schedule cooking while on the podcast and sharing all these wonderful tips and insights on games, uh, campaigns, and GMing. Okay, so final statements, everyone. Floor is open. Anyone would like to start? Go ahead. Cooking
Uh,
metaphor. Let's
Go ahead,
start.
go ahead.
Start with the chef. Okay, Chef Abad.
Toby.
Well, sige, since ginawa mo na akong chef, I might as well use the chef analogy.
Okay.
Gaming, GMing is like cooking. When
Okay.
you cook a meal, you don't really cook it for yourself. You cook it to share it with the people who'll be at your table.
Wow. Awesome.
Now,
I
you of
like that.
course, now of course you'll have to cook something that everyone's expecting to eat. If
Mhm.
people are vegetarian, no matter how good your steak is, they're gonna hate it.
They
So
won't
make
eat it.
sure it's clear. You have to make sure it's clear what you guys want to eat. And finally, when people try your cooking, sometimes they'll be shy, sometimes they'll love it. The question is, will you cook for them more or not? So be open-minded and realize that everyone has their type of flavor and their type of preference on how the things are cooked.
But sometimes they'll say it's delicious, but it's not. Diba? Sometimes. So you have to be prepared.
You
Okay.
have to be
Yeah.
prepared to add spices for those who want it.
Yes. Actually, put yung mga spices mo or yung mga sausawan sa gilid, kanya-kanya na lang timpla. So you have to be prepared for that too. Dapat
Oh, exactly.
kompleto yung mga
Diba?
condiments mo. Right, right. So that's a good analogy. Justin?
Yeah, it's your. My last advice is that if you really are interested in the other person, and when you GM or you game, and you really, really act it out because you are interested, it shows, and it's really easy to do it. So it makes your game much better, or makes playing with you, if you're the player, much more fun. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're like that as a person, you'll have no problem gaming. If you're not, try to be, and everything, including your game and your other, the rest of your life will improve. So yeah, be a good person ish.
Awesome. Okay, so I guess that's it. Let's wrap up.
Mark?
Yeah,
Mark, sorry.
yeah. I just gonna
Mark?
mention that. Yeah, I'm just gonna mention that we have some open table games coming up in April, so just watch the lists for those.
All right, all right. Thanks.
Yes.
I'm sorry I left out Mark. Anyway, so thanks for your time, guys. Really had fun. We should do this. Like I said, we should do this like twice a month, and let's start off thinking of new topics for the next Hangout Mimic. Okay.
There's there's a suggestion from BJ since he wasn't able to join.
Hmm.
Can we
Ano to?
have the next seminar be focused naman on the joys of playing by the book?
Okay. Fine.
Oh, I can
We can
relate
do
to
that.
that.
So we can have the other side of the discussion. Well, what are the joys of following the rules as written? Why house ruling can sometimes be detrimental, and
All
so on and
right.
so forth.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Sige, we can take that. Okay. So,
Good.
everyone, maraming salamat. Justin, thanks for being our tech guy and setting it up. We just had
No problem.
sorry that BJ wasn't able to join, but I'm sure we'll have him next time. So, I'd like to thank our guests, Justin, Mark, and Toby, for joining me on the first episode for this year of Hangout Mimic, and hopefully I'll see you guys again
In 2 weeks.
uh, in 2 weeks. So this has been Mon, GM Tristan, in behalf of all our guests and great DMs. Keep on gaming, and may the dice be good with you. Bye bye and mabuhay. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody. I'll be ending broadcast. 3, 2, 1.